The next item of business is a statement by Ivan McKee on Scotland's planning system, supporting investment and economic growth and delivering quality homes. The Minister will take questions at the end of his statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Ivan McKee. Up to 10 minutes, Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, planning is an essential building block for a successful growing economy. What we build and where we build it creates the right conditions for economic growth and prosperity. When planning is responsive and has appropriate resources and expertise, it can unlock economic potential and leverage investment, especially in housing. Planning is a powerful tool for delivering development, including new homes, in a way that supports our commitments to net zero and nature and builds stronger communities. The delivery plan, which I am publishing today, sets out the actions we will take so that planning plays its full part in addressing the housing emergency. We are accelerating these actions to ensure there are tangible results in the coming months. We have already reformed Scotland's planning system to set a strong vision and clear national planning policies for the future through the National Planning Framework 4, NPF 4. A key objective of NPF 4 is to support the delivery of more quality homes for everyone who needs one. Policy is clear that applications will be supported where they are on sites allocated in local development plans. Development proposals for new homes that improve affordability and choice and which address identified gaps in provision will be supported. Proposals for new homes will be supported where they make provision for affordable homes to meet an identified need. Our national planning policy on housing is permissive, not prescriptive. That will not change. However, our policy does not support development at any cost. Some members will be hearing calls for the so-called presumption in favour of sustainable development to be introduced, a policy that predated NPF 4. But this will not speed up delivery. Instead, it will take us back to more conflict and delay and will do nothing to incentivise completions. And I think it's useful to remind anyone now calling for such a change from within this chamber of the extensive engagement and parliamentary scrutiny which resulted in this Parliament adopting NPF 4 in January of 2023. At that time, members agreed that we needed to monitor the impact of NPF 4 on housing delivery. In its annual review earlier this year, the Local Government Housing and Planning Committee also agreed that data on this is crucial. That evidence has informed the priorities I am setting out today. Presiding Officer, in recent weeks I have been working intensively with my ministerial colleagues and stakeholders to identify how the planning system can help to address the housing emergency in Scotland. Those discussions have exposed that planning is not the only or even the most significant reason for the challenges we are facing in housing. The Competition and Markets Authority, in a report published earlier this year, identified that on average 29,000 homes have been given planning permission annually in Scotland over recent years. This significantly exceeds local authorities' land supply targets, and it's also higher than the 25,000 homes target that industry representatives have been calling for. Across Scotland, we estimate that more than 164,000 homes have planning permission but have not yet been built. Looking into this further, analysis of house building applications shows that in the Glasgow and Edinburgh city regions alone, planning permission has been granted for 121,000 homes that have not yet been built. Of these, around 38,000 units have been started but not yet complete. The remaining may or may not be programmed by developers for build-out. Land has also been allocated in development plans for a further 60,000 homes which have yet to receive planning permission. The evidence shows that there is in fact no shortage of land, including land with planning permission already in place. What we need now is action to turn those permissions into homes. Making progress in the coming year in stalled applications will be our absolute priority. There is more that we can and must do in planning to unlock more homes. Today I am announcing clear actions that this Government will be taking to ensure planning is front and centre in our efforts to turn this critical situation around policy, delivery, efficiency and capacity. On policy, we will continue to work with planning authorities to support them to put the new national policies into practice, so that many more homes will be given planning permission every year, where they are supported by agreed plans. Guidance will support this. We will also actively progress work to bring homes that have been given planning permission forward. Our work to reform compulsory purchase contribute to that, and we will identify other mechanisms that could also stimulate delivery. And delivery, of course, is critical too. We need to be crystal clear about the specific issues that are stalling development. But officials are now working with house builders and planning authorities to examine information which has been gathered on stalled sites. This will identify where well-placed interventions can broker solutions as well as broader challenges. That group will meet for a detailed discussion later this week to look at the evidence and agree actions. And where we will continue to respect the lead role that planning authorities play in determining the future development of their areas, over the next 12 months in particular, we will focus our efforts to help them to proactively enable development. Presiding Officer, I can announce today that we will be establishing a further planning hub to support housing delivery. This hub's approach will be informed by evidence and shaped in agreement with key partners from the public and private sectors, including COSLA, Heads of Planning Scotland, the Improvement Service and house builders. We want the hub to enable more efficient, responsive and timely decisions and delivery. We are also supporting early adopters of master plan consent areas and ensuring new local development plans include a pipeline of deliverable housing land. Thirdly, efficiency. And it will not come as a surprise to know that making processes and systems more efficient is a passion of mine. In a delivery plan, we have taken a structured approach and reviewed the process from end to end to identify issues which are getting in the way of progress and where improvements can be made. For some, unfortunately, the planning process can be unpredictable, costly and lengthy. So we will do more with planning authorities to improve and streamline procedures. For example, small and medium-sized house builders have raised concerns about planning conditions, so we are working to promote greater consistency in practice. We know that there is more we can do to address proportionality. We are actively working to better align consents, streamline validation and provide a better service through processing agreements. This will help to speed up the planning process and complement the work of the National Planning Improvement Champion, who has been doing excellent work already in this area. In addition, I can announce that we are taking forward work on further permitted development rights. This could, for example, accelerate the change of use of properties above shops to residential use. We will consider this and other options to use this powerful tool, which essentially removes the need for planning permission. I can also advise that work to introduce an infrastructure levy will be stopped. The focus instead will be improving guidance on Section 75 planning agreements. I know this announcement will be welcomed by the industry, and I hope that they recognise that we are listening to them and their concerns. Finally, we need to do more to support and increase the capacity of planning authorities. The Housing Planning Hub will be part of this. I have already taken steps to increase planning fees to enable authorities to recoup more of the costs associated with planning. While the presumption against ring fencing means we will not direct where local authorities invest any increased revenue, I do of course expect them to use that income to support their planning services. We have also initiated efforts to recruit and train additional planners through a government graduate programme and by promoting skills and training. To encourage more to consider a career in planning, I can announce today that next year we will treble the number of bursaries available to postgraduate planning students. In addition, we need to improve the capacity of local elected members who are key to the planning process. Planning Aid Scotland is developing a fuller package of training for local elected members to support this. Presiding Officer, the First Minister has made clear that Scotland is open for business and that growing our economy by increasing investment is a key priority. Enabling more homes to be built will help to fulfil that aim. And while the measures I have set out today will also benefit wider developments and projects. But house building must also be about homemaking and giving people good quality places in which to live. We cannot develop at the expense of Scotland's natural capital, and we must continue, of course, to work towards net zero. That is how to create a sustainable economy which harnesses all of Scotland's natural and cultural assets for the benefit of current and future generations. Our policies are now designed to incentivise developers to build out their sites more quickly and to support the provision of affordable homes that meet diverse needs. These policies and the actions I have outlined today will ensure that homes are built in planned locations which will better meet people's needs. Presiding Officer, planning has not created the housing emergency, but it can help us to find solutions to the challenges we are facing. Everyone involved in planning has a role to play in achieving this, not least government. And through the National Planning Policy on Housing and through the delivery plan I am publishing today, this government is taking urgent action to hasten development and to create the homes all across Scotland which people need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business, and I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons now. And I call on Megan Gallagher.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and to the Minister for advance sight of his statement. But this statement is an admission of defeat. I was hoping for some groundbreaking planning legislation today to build more homes, a plan to fix the challenges we are facing right across our housing sector, yet we've been left with another hub and an increase in planning application costs that will deter future housing developments. The Minister has the brass neck to turn up today to say that he needs to be crystal clear about the issues that are stalling development. It's his government who are standing in the way of building more homes. How does this government reconcile with the aim of delivering more quality homes with the decision to propose rent controls both during and between tenancies, when the Minister perfectly understands that this will restrict rental income flexibility and deter vital investment? So the burning question: if this hub is designed to be the saviour of our planning system, why wasn't this included in the initial drafting of the housing bill? And is this the government's last-ditch attempt to save this failing housing legislation?
Minister.
Wow. So, in asking us to speed up the process, the member's asking us for us to bring forward more legislation, which would take years and wouldn't add anything to the legislation we already have. She complains about rises in fees. If she spent any time at all talking to the sector, she would understand that they're very comfortable to pay more fees, provided that money goes into increasing capacity in the planning system. She ridicules the idea of a hub. If she spent any time talking to the sector, she would know that their first ask is for a hub to be set up to help accelerate planning applications through the system. So right across the piece, the member is absolutely clear of the mark and has clearly spent no time at all talking to the sector or any of the other 23 actions we're taking forward in the delivery plan published today, including actions to speed up and make the process more efficient, master plan consent areas which are in the legislation, and we are taking forward and accelerating the work to treble the number of young people coming through the bursary route into the system, and many other actions we're taking. We are serious about tackling the role that planning can take to support tackling the housing emergency, but the member should also recognise the data very clearly in the evidence I've published today. 29,000 homes given planning permission on average over the last few years. Data from the Competition and Markets Authority, far in excess of the asks of the sector. That land is there willing to be built out already with planning permission.
Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to thank the Minister for his statement today. It does seem that the Minister has been listening partly to the sector, and there is a lot to be welcomed this afternoon. Although when the Minister says that, and I'm quoting, our national planning policy on housing is permissive, not prescriptive, while technically correct, I'm not quite sure that is a sentiment shared by house builders. But can I firstly ask the Minister, based on the statistics released yesterday and the actions in his statement today, when the Government expect to see processing times to start falling for major applications? It's now over a year against a 16-week statutory timeframe. And secondly, Presiding Officer, on sites with permission which haven't been developed, planning applications cost developers significant sums of money they can't borrow for. It's generally coming straight out of their cash flow, so it's not in their interest to sit on those permissions. Can the Minister then commit to an audit of the approvals and the sites that have been zoned for housing in the system on the basis of deliverability and time they have had that approval, so that we can get an accurate understanding of the capacity to build the homes that we so desperately need?
Minister.
Thank you, and I welcome the members' recognition of the fact that we have, of course, been listening and engaging very closely with the sector, and this government stands ready to work with all parties in this place and across the sector to deliver what we need for Scotland's planning system, our housing needs and our wider economy. And I can absolutely commit to a first priority as taking forward work to identify those stall sites. I've asked for that information on stall sites to be pulled together so that we can understand what is within those 164 homes that have already been given approval. I've also asked for sight of planning applications that are going through, large planning applications that are going through the system across all 34 of our planning authorities, so that we can better focus the resources of the hub on providing that brokerage service to address the priority need to shift the dial on the number of homes that are being given planning permission each year, and to speed up, particularly on the larger developments where it makes a difference, those processing times. I'll be honest, that data is of course held at local authority level, so we're reaching out to local authorities to secure that data, so we do have visibility in sight of where best to apply and focus resources to support them, and we're also reaching out to Homes for Scotland and other in the sector for them to provide where they see information on applications that are stuck in the system where we can help to move those forward. But as I say, we're very keen to work with all parties to make a big difference here.
Emma Roddick, to be followed by Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister indicated in his statement that the Scottish Government has already made significant reforms to planning policy. While Labour down south has also promised significant reform, I won't be alone in feeling that the proposed actions fall short, and I hope that the Scottish Government has more ambition. Does the housing sector need further reform to enable more house building, and what is the Minister planning to do to bring that reform forward, and how does it compare to what is being progressed by the UK Government?
Minister.
I thank the member for the question, and as indicated earlier, we are happy to work with anyone who can help us to move this agenda forward. And I'm just back last week from the British Irish Council, where I had close engagement with not only the Northern Irish Government, the Welsh Government, the Government of Ireland and the UK Government's new Planning Minister, Housing Minister in the Lords, and with a very useful conversation about what we could learn from each other. And it's interesting to note we all face the same challenges. We have had a close look at what the UK Government is proposing, and what we've identified that is across pretty much everything that's in their agenda is either things that we're already doing or are working on delivering. The calculation method is interesting. When we use the UK Government's new proposed calculation method for housing targets against our housing landscape, we find that it actually delivers a lower number than we already have in place through the Honda and Mather system. The UK Government has taken forward 5-year housing land supply. It's already in place through our LDPs. They talk about a 10% affordable target. We're already at a 25% affordable target. They talk about brownfield and community infrastructure activities that are already in NPF4 policies, and they talk about increasing fees, something we've already taken steps on, and they talk about 300 more planners, something that we will more than match on a proportionate basis. So we're working closely with others, learning where we can, but it's interesting that what the UK Government is proposing, I would say that we're already delivering on much of that already.
Alexander Stewart, to be followed by Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister's statement does not address the impact of the Government's proposed rent controls between tenancies, a policy which continues to have a major concern for investors. So how does the Scottish Government plan to mitigate the likely decline in housing supplies as a result of these restrictions?
Minister. Well, if the member had been aware of what we're talking about today, it's the planning process and how the planning process can help to support house building. And in terms of rent controls, you'll be aware that my colleague, the Housing Minister, has already brought forward amendments to the Housing Bill to address those very concerns. There are many factors, as I identified in my statement, that we need to address to resolve the housing emergency. Planning has a significant role to play, but there are many other parts of the system that are working very hard across government to deliver on other aspects of that.
Christine Graham, to be followed by Daniel Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good housing is central to health and well-being, but it's difficult in rural areas such as the Scottish Borders to have house builders engage in small developments. However, some communities may feel they will be sidestepped in the interest of accelerated house building, and many, as we know, only become engaged in the planning process late in the day. So I welcome reference to Planning Aid Scotland, and frankly, local members should be well aware of its functions, but most of the public aren't. What can the Scottish Government do to help communities engage with planning aid?
Minister.
Planning Aid Scotland is an excellent organisation that I wasn't aware of until I became Planning Minister, and I've had a number of meetings and events with them over the past months. And just to give them a plug, if you like, they use the services of current and retired planners, experienced planners, to support individuals who are engaging with the planning system, and I thoroughly commend the work that they are doing, and communities or individuals that want to avail themselves of their services should reach out and engage with Planning Aid Scotland.
Daniel Johnson, to be followed by Ben McPherson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister is correct to identify the need to bring on more planners in order to deliver against these targets, but he will know that the workforce of planners currently sits at its lowest, 1,205 town planners working in local authorities. SDS estimate that we need 700 more planners to both replace and meet demand. And Dundee is the sole institution training planners, and the bursaries that he points to fund just 10 planners at present. So can he confirm that his proposals will just increase that to 30? Will we have more centres to train planners? And when will the Government bring forward more detail on the work-based training for planners that are outlined in the action plan?
It's an absolutely valid point, and one of the things that struck me in my work engaging with planning authorities and the planning ecosystem is the demands on the planning resource. And that's a consequence of a number of factors, because as the system has become rightly more complicated and we have more challenges to address, be it climate, flooding, biodiversity and many others alongside the housing emergency, and as other private sector organisations are requiring more planning resource in the housing space, but also, of course, in energy and many other aspects of the system, the whole ecosystem. The demand on planners, the need for more planners, is the supply has not kept pace with the demand. So that's why we're addressing this. I think it's not insignificant. I think 30 more planners per year adds to the total as one element of what we're doing through the bursary scheme, which is the quickest and most cost-effective way to deliver planners. And I'm absolutely open to increase that further if there is capacity in the system to deliver that. We will bring forward very, very soon information on the proposal for graduate planning, the planners to be employed within Scottish Government as they go through their courses in parallel with the bursary scheme. So that will add a significant number of additional planners onto that pipeline, and that will be targeted to start, of course, in the next academic year, 2025. But in parallel with that, we are identified the need to, where we can, ask retired planners to come back and encourage them to be able to come back and perhaps work part-time, to identify where those who have left the planning profession mid-career can come back into the system. But in parallel with that, also to identify roles that can be done in the planning system through digitisation, automation, process improvement, or by individuals indeed who are not fully trained planners. So in all of these aspects, we're taking forward work which we believe cumulatively will have an impact on the resource within the planning system.
Ben McPherson, to be followed by Ariane Burgess.
How will today's announcements help in areas of rapidly growing populations, for example, here in the capital? And will they help progress the Grantham waterfront development, for example, as a strategic site? And can the Minister reassure that stopping work to introduce an infrastructure levy won't affect the provision of necessary services in these areas of rapid growing populations? So, for example, GP practices, primary schools, secondary schools, road infrastructure, etc.
Minister.
Yeah, all very good points. I think on the infrastructure levy, we absolutely recognise the points that the member makes. When we looked at this, we came to the conclusion that the existing Section 75 provisions, which is far more money than the proposed infrastructure levy would do was the most effective way to continue to provide infrastructure, and clearly in NPF4 policy there is an infrastructure first provision as part of the planning process. So we absolutely recognise the need for joining up infrastructure provision with housing development. We think there are other ways to more effectively deliver on that. With regards to Granton Waterfront, the member will not be surprised to know that as Planning Minister I'm not going to comment on any individual applications, but in terms of more generally in Edinburgh and indeed other parts of the country that are experiencing rapid population growth, we will be identifying those stalled sites and those applications that have been in the system that are for a considerable period of time to work closely with planning authorities to see what needs to be done to unblock them and move those forward through the brokerage service provided by the new planning hub.
Ariane Burgess, to be followed by Evelyn Tweed.
I welcome the move to promote the change of use of properties, such as those above shops, to residential use, and this measure will support us in creating 3 homes for the price of 1. On the planning hubs, can I ask the Minister, will the hubs enlist ecological specialists and provide an opportunity to fund empty homes officers to be deployed where needed?
Minister.
I'm glad the member welcomes the focus on change of use, and she's right, that can provide additional capacity within the system to bring more homes onto the market. With regards to the planning hub, we have considered carefully how best the planning hub can deliver on the need to increase significantly the number of houses that are available and coming through the planning system. And for that purpose, it will be closely focused on those large stall sites where we see there is scope to make a difference quickly. We also absolutely recognise that work needs to be done working with SMEs on smaller sites, and that is something that we are taking forward in parallel through other provisions that we have described in the delivery plan I've outlined today. But the member is also right, within the increasingly complex planning system there are a need for other professions, and environmental services is absolutely one of those. Flooding experts, biodiversity experts, there's a whole range of other skill sets that are required within the service, and the hub will be designed specifically to reach out for experts in other adjacent professions that are required to help move forward applications that are taking longer than they should within the planning system.
Thank you. I'm very keen that all members who have pressed to put a question have an opportunity, and I'd be grateful for slightly more concise responses, Minister. I call Evelyn Tweed to be followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today's statement made reference to potentially expanding permitted development rights, yet in England this has led to inappropriate conversions that have often resulted in poor housing being created. How will the Minister ensure such outcomes are avoided here in Scotland?
Minister.
The member makes a very valid point, and this is absolutely something we've recognised. We're open to considering more development rights, but I know that this can be a blunt instrument and requires a very careful approach to avoid unintended consequences, like the member has outlined. I think we can learn lessons from the experiences in England, and we absolutely don't want to see that experience of homes in industrial areas, overcrowded conversions and poor quality living accommodation replicated here. Instead, our starting point will to be explore how PDRs can help us to deliver town centre living, reuse empty buildings in a sustainable way and support rural communities.
Willie Rennie, to be followed by Stuart McMillan.
The Minister knows that change was essential after the housing conference that both he and I spoke to quite recently. And I think it does seem sensible to progress a more pragmatic way of making the current policy work more effectively. But I am concerned about the availability of usable development land, which there is clearly a problem in certain parts of the country. So would he be prepared to look again at the policy to make sure sufficient land is available?
Minister.
Well, I think it's important to recognise that we've got this balance, of course, between the need for housing development, but to make sure that that is in the right place, and developments that are on prime agricultural land without infrastructure, not adjacent to transport links, and in places that might be, that don't meet the local plans brought forward by planning authorities and local authorities is not the direction that we want to take. As I've outlined the numbers, there is a significant amount of land already with planning permission, and significantly more amount of land that is in local development plans but has not yet been brought forward for planning permission. So I think we've got a lot to go at there, and I think he would agree with me. We don't want to be in a position where land that's been brought forward is running counter to our need to maintain good quality agricultural land, or indeed is challenging in terms of biodiversity, climate change, flooding provisions, or other very important aspects of NPF 4.
Stuart McMillan, to be followed by Graham Simpson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. There is a need to encourage registered social landlords to build the new properties that are needed and wanted by tenants, including our Moan, Greenock and Inverclyde constituency. And how will today's announcement support an acceleration in the provision of social housing? And how will the Scottish Government ensure that registered social landlords are bought into the aim to speed up delivery alongside planning authorities and also developers?
Well, clearly that works at a local level, and local authorities are the statutory housing authority with a responsibility for assessing housing requirements locally, and indeed for working with RLSLs and others to identify priorities for affordable housing delivery as part of its strategic housing investment plan. My colleague, the Housing Minister, works closely with local authorities and RSL through Scottish Government area teams to oversee delivery of affordable housing programmes. And I think it's important to recognise that the Scottish Government has a strong track record in housing by supporting the delivery of more than 133,000 affordable homes since 2007, with more than 94,000 of these being for social rent.
Graham Simpson, to be followed by Paul Sweeney.
Thank you very much. Presiding Officer, the problem here is that council planning departments for many, many years have been hollowed out. Yeah. It's a question of funding. So I don't see anything in this statement that addresses that. Now, the Minister seems to be pinning his hopes on a rather vague planning hub. So that will only work if it has the ability to actually deliver. Is it going to have any powers to do that, and will it have a budget?
Minister.
You know, it's interesting, but the member asks about the resources going to planning departments, and the member sat next to him just a minute ago was complaining about us increasing fees, and it's important to recognise that it's important to...
Let's hear one another.
It's important to recognise that the cost of council planning departments is only approximately 65% covered on average by fees collected from planning applicants. We recognise that increasing fees alongside improving service is absolutely critical to providing the resources required to do that. In terms of the hub itself, yes, it will have a budget. It will focus on unblocking the stalled sites that are around the country that already have planning permission. It will focus on, as I've already described, working through what is preventing sites and applications that are in the planning system from proceeding more rapidly through that system, and it will be very targeted and focused on working with local authorities, planning authorities, who of course are the statutory provider, and able to deliver that. And again, if the member spent any time at all talking to the sector, he would recognise that the planning hub is something that they've absolutely been calling for.
Paul Sweeney, to be followed by John Mason.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Planning authorities and planning committees and local authorities often have to make decisions on applications based on evidence commissioned by the applicant, and this can particularly be problematic in contentious cases such as demolitions of listed buildings. Would it be possible for the Minister to look at options for planning authorities to be able to commission independent adjudication or advice on such things like structural condition surveys that can be then billed to the applicant, so that we can ensure integrity in the planning process and that we don't have people shopping around to get the outcome they want, which can lead to unnecessary demolition of national heritage?
Minister.
The member makes an important point, and again, amongst the many aspects have to be considered in the round in NPF4, the 33 different policies that national heritage and cultural importance of historic buildings is an important part of considerations. I think it's true to say that planning authorities, if I'm not mistaken, already have the ability to commission independent advice as required, and indeed applications that come forward on appeal to Scottish Government through the reporter process. There is work done to consider the independent advice that's been brought forward as part of that, to ensure that all sides have been considered. But I take on board the point the member has made, and it's really important that we consider and ensure that our national heritage is considered as part of this process.
And John Mason.
Thank you. The Minister in his statement referred to net zero, nature and building stronger communities, all of which suggests to me using more brownfield sites and fewer greenfield sites. As it is, his constituency and mine have a number of brownfield sites, and yet we see building going on and on, so that Glasgow might even get into Cope Bridge one of these days. So can he reassure us that brownfield sites will be used even more through this statement? Thank you.
Minister.
Absolutely, and the member is right to identify net zero, biodiversity, nature, building communities are all policies within NPF4 and we need to be considered in that round. Indeed, as is the presumption in favour of brownfield sites, and absolutely recognise what he has identified with regard to our own constituencies in that regard. So it's absolutely something that's critical to our focus, and as the hub works through those sites that are either stuck in the planning system or already have permission but have been taken forward, I have no doubt that many of those will be on brownfield sites where work to join up different partners to help unlock those will be a key part of what they are taking forward.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement. I allow a moment or two for front benches to organise before the next item of business.